in an environment that maybe was challenging, some may think, and it's all relative, but overcame. And now you're this community leader spreading knowledge, love, community support. Where did it start? I can't imagine you thought way back when, I'm going to be a leader and train people.
I couldn't have answered that question back when I was a child. But when I think about different points in my life that were defining moments for me, it was all there. That's why it's important to take time to reflect, because I believe that if we mine our own data, the data from our life, our experiences, then there's things that are there that tell us or point us into the direction. So here's what I mean. So yes, you're right. And I appreciate that you were like, I'm going to be cautious about how much of her story I share. My story is one of trauma to triumph, right? And so as a child, I lived in an unhealthy and unsafe home environment. I was abused as a child. And for many years, that abuse went unnoticed by those in my household, those that knew me in community. And I think that there was a piece that I didn't want people to know because I was afraid. I was ashamed. I felt guilty, even though it wasn't my fault. But as a child, you don't know what to do with those emotions. So my response was, education is my way out. So I excelled in grade school and high school. And I knew that in order to be able to be economically self-sufficient and independent, that education was my pathway. So I tried to be the best student. I also took on that perfectionist tendency because I wanted people to think that I was good and that I was lovable. And so if I was perfect and if I was an A, maybe B student, like some things became unacceptable. Lower than a certain grade was like unacceptable because I wanted to be good. I wanted to be perfect. I wanted to prove that although the things that people couldn't see that were happening to me, but that I was still good enough and that I could aspire to do more than, what the trajectory of my mom was even, right? And so for me, it was out of that formed in me this desire to lead, this desire to give back. At the age of 16, I left home. So I'm in high school. I'm entering my junior year, but because it was so unsafe and unhealthy, and it came really to a point where I had to choose me, and I chose me. I asked for help. A lot of things happened on that particular day. I remember it so vividly in my mind. But even when I asked for help and help was there, then the story started changing and people started wanting to let's handle this differently. Let's keep this in the family. And I'm like, I have to choose me now again and walk away. And I walked away that day. And as a result of that choice, it put me on a path of healing. It put me on a path of there's hope for a future. It put me on the path of understanding the internal work that has to happen when you've been living in trauma.
And so many people stay in, that's what we can tell, an awful situation.
Yes.
What other people's awful situations are, they often choose to stay with what they know versus even adults move to the unknown for fear of
right
what's worse. So you at 16 to be able to make that choice, huge.
And I think that if certain instances or situations that kind of led up to that decision wouldn't have happened, I probably would have stayed and just, as long as you don't hurt me anymore and harm me anymore, no one has to know, I'll be fine, we'll continue on. But there was some things that begun to happen where it took me to kind of like the fork in the road. Either you're going to stay this way and this is what your life will be, or you will choose to go the path unknown and whatever happens will happen. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm already living in hell. The other choice can't be any worse, any bad, any more hellish than where I already am. So I chose me, thinking, I don't know what's on the other side of this choice, but it has to be better. It has to be different. Right? And it was. But I will tell you, even in the midst of that choice and the years that followed, there was a lot of rocky roads and ups and downs and emotions that I felt, and really trying to understand more about myself, but just how do I show up in the world and reclaim my power back? How do I make choices and decisions not based on fear, or that the unknown is there? I'm like, I did it once, like, right? Like this, now I'm building this muscle of courage and confidence that I don't have to know all of the answers. And why ideally I want to be in control of all of the things, because my life, there was so much that was out of my control. How do I live this life? And one of the ways that I was able to do that, it's only by God's grace, was my faith. I thought, if God will see me through this and will walk with me, I will be okay. And I am okay.
You're more than okay. You're helping so many of us to work through our journeys. Do you think 16-year-old young, although probably mature beyond your years at that point, Shalia, would have anticipated Shalia today?
No, at the time I couldn't see her. Because there was just so much hurt. There was just so much masking, right? Like I shared, like I met this woman who shared the "it's my time" and was embracing me. And because of my hurt and because of the walls that I built up, I couldn't even receive her goodness. I couldn't receive her love. I couldn't receive her genuine care, because that's not what I experienced. And that's not what I knew. So it took time for the healing process and for me to shed the layers of, kind of the things that happened in my life, to say it's okay. And there are good people in the world, right? And from that, I thought, I don't want another girl or woman to experience what I experienced and think that, one, she's alone, and that, two, she doesn't have a choice. While I didn't choose the abuse, I did choose how I would respond and take responsibility for myself. And to me, that was about me taking ownership and power of the pieces that were mine, right? And so my faith and making those choices and daily doing the work is what has inspired me to want to help other women and girls in particular, but everyone. I mean, I want to develop and train all folks to be their best, right? But women and girls are my audience, because it was as a child, as a girl, that I started experiencing these things. It wasn't until I became an adult that I was able to heal and grow and shed. And it's a journey, right? And so for me, it's like, I want women and girls to know that whatever's happened to you doesn't have to define you. I want women and girls to know that there are safe and brave spaces in the world. And for me in particular, it was other women who became my community of support. And it is in community that growth, healing, joy can happen. And so I am so intentional about creating that space with women in leadership and any other groups of women that I'm involved with or volunteer with. Like, that is a cornerstone of how I show up and what I try to create with intention for them.